Hello everyone, this is Cross. What I'd like to talk to you about today is my Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition campaign. This is journal entry number 11. So, a few things that happened. We had a few scenes kind of starting off in the inn, moving on to the Breakfast with Lesage, where I introduced a new character. Already had 6 players, now I have 7. There's 8 people at the table. Some people at this point would be saying, you're crazy. And to be honest with you, a few months ago, I'd have been saying the same thing. Now, what does that mean? I reached out to this guy. I was actually trying to recruit him for the Tuesday game. But it turned out that his schedule kind of worked better for the Saturday game. Now, the other thing is that the players Saturday know him. So it was kind of the breaking the ice and all that, like all that had already been done. That part of the job had already been done. So, my intention was, first I just kind of generally asked the players, and I did it in such a way that I didn't, I was referring to him as this person or they, trying to be very, trying to keep any sort of information as who this could possibly be under wraps. So I'm asking basically the players. I said, would you guys feel comfortable with another player? Which most of them responded, look, dude, if you feel more comfortable with another player, then we're fine. Okay, well, here's the thing. These 6 players have been great, and they have made my job very easy. And so therefore, having 6 players at the table felt more to me like having 4 players at the table, which is normally, I feel like 4 to 5 is normally where, I feel comfortable. However, after playing with this Saturday group, 6 players felt like nothing to me. So I felt very confident in going ahead and throwing the 7th player in. At this point, I started to notice, just for other DMs, I started noticing the potential for redundancies starting to happen here. At this point, we have 2 fighters. They have 2 different specializations. One of them is he chose a melee style character. The other fighter is a ranged character. So still very vast differences in their character. I personally feel that you could have 3 wizards at the table, and as long as the 3 wizards are RP'd very differently, it could work. Even mechanically, wizards can feel very different based on your spell selections and stuff like that. And it's also very cool that you have 3 wizards, because now the 3 wizards can share the spells that they picked. And they kind of work they can kind of work in synergy a little bit, but enough of that. I decided that we're going to go ahead and introduce this guy. Now, what does that mean for me? It means to me personally, as a DM, that I need to introduce this character. Okay. So they had talked about wanting to do the Breakfast with Lesage. They were definitely wanting to do that. They were talking about it during the week. So I was like, this seems like a very good way of introducing this specific character. So I had a very busy week. If you guys watched the VOD at the very beginning, I'm even lost in where we are in the story. I go ahead and I remember very quickly, go ahead and jump off. And the reason for that was we actually didn't play on Tuesday. Tuesday's game was kind of supposed to affect this story in some way, shape, or form. And it just didn't happen. So I had to kind of cut the video off that Ashley had seen. She has to fix the video. It's just a nice way of just kind of bailing out of that scene happening. And we had to run through a few scenes, a few conversations, kind of get the characters squared away on things they had seen, have conversations with individual characters. And then Clara wanted to go. She went and knocked on the door of the architect. Now, he didn't have to be there, but he was. And and there was a scene that could have easily happened, but I'm looking at the time, and I'm like, man, if I run this scene, I might not get to introduce this character, which was the utmost importance to me for this session. Why? Because the player's sitting at the table waiting to introduce his character. And it would have sucked, honestly, if he didn't get to do that. He'd have been sitting there the whole time like, hey guys, I'm a new player. You got to introduce that character. So I chose instead to hold that scene off till later. Like, let's do that off camera. We'll just kind of retcon it a little bit, and let's move along. So in between sessions, we'll go ahead and do this. Go ahead and do this scene so that the information. You get to ask your questions. We can take our time with it. That to me is very important. I didn't want to rush through this scene. I wanted to give her the time that the scene. I wanted to give it the respect that it deserved. And honestly, I was so pushed for time that I didn't feel like I could do that. Let's do this between sessions. We'll make sure and get that done. And then while they're all in their room, I'm thinking about these characters have so much freedom in my game, okay? Which at this point is actually very bad for me. Very bad. Because I need to introduce this character. It has to happen today. I don't have any other options, so I went ahead and introduced somebody coming to the tavern to get them from Lesage, which kind of restricts their movements a little bit. They could have gone to the Architect's Temple. They could have gone anywhere. I needed them to go to the breakfast because I needed to introduce this character. This to me is a good use of railroading. It basically restricts the character's movement. It's something that they kind of wanted to do anyway, but it makes them focus on it a little bit more, and it kind of drags them to the scene, which allows me to run the scene and introduce the new character. And then we got to introduce the character, gave them time to kind of RP, talk a little bit, and at which point a combat kind of broke out. The players have been referring to it as the Red Breakfast, kind of keying off the Game of Thrones thing a little bit. Yuan Ti are very interesting to me, and it could be in the Monsters Manual that I read this, talking about the pure bloods. If they get a job as a food taster, they can taste the food that's poisoned without any ill effects. They're fine. Pass it off to the noble or royal or whatever, and then all of a sudden, thinking that the food's safe, the person is subject to whatever poison is within the food. This to me, from a storyline perspective, is how you can have an ancient dragon in the room, and the players of their level 3 be able to help or even save this entity's life. It all worked out very nicely. The fight could have gone either way. I believe the players started feeling the pressure because I'd like to believe that they knew that I would follow through with anything that was going on. And this is the other thing, when you have seven players, a lot of the calculations, the strength of the fights and stuff like that, a lot of those just kind of go out the window. I quit applying poison damage kind of through the fight because I felt that the minute was up, so to speak. They would have had to reapply the poison in some way to the blade in order for it to continue working, and they didn't have that on them. So basically at some point the damage that they were dealing started going way down. But it was a very interesting fight, and that's more me playing by the same rules as the players. You look at poisons, they work for so long. Now they tend to only work on one strike. They got several strikes, but that was for me. That was because they were UNT and they had special poisons that they had prepared. Just like they had a special poison that was able to take down at least temporarily take down a ancient dragon. But this was a good thing to kind of bring the characters about, and it honestly became, because I was introducing a new character. I wanted some semblance of RP between the original party. I wanted RP with the new character, and then I wanted to throw in a combat. And I was in Lesage, and honestly, UNT trying to poison and kill Lesage after 20 years of her absence seemed like an amazing start to a storyline that we'll see if they explore or not. In return, she gave them the option of starting a guild in her town with the fees waived, or a favor. She, if they didn't want to do that. Now initially I had just stated, you can go start a guild with your fees waived. Well, okay, what if the players didn't want to do that? And I was actually thinking about this during the moment. I really hadn't thought about what she was going to reward them with, and I knew that there was this guild system that I wanted to develop. And I had kind of used a guild system in my previous campaign. There were things like I liked about having the different fees and not having them. So I've kind of changed around to make it a little bit more player friendly. But there was a fee involved. So she's going to waive the fee. Well, what? So if that's your reward, that kind of forces the players to go create a guild. Because if they're going to make use of this reward, then they've got to go create a guild. And if that's not what they saw for their characters, that's railroading in a bad way. So after saying that, I'm thinking about these standards and thinking about, okay, basically I just forced them to go make a guild with this reward. So then I immediately tried to kind of say, hey, look, if you don't want to do that, then I'll just owe you one. So it's this ambiguousness of, okay, we can go start a guild and waive some kind of fee, but we don't know what that is. And what's the benefit of having a guild versus a favor from an ancient silver dragon? So now there's a choice. And that was very important, because now I've given my players a choice of, do you want what's behind door number 1 or behind door number 2? Because either way, it could be a great boon to you. But because you don't know what, you just don't have certain information, the possibilities are starting to mount up. And there's a discussion about this. And I believe that there has been for the past week of, what are we going to do? And the fact that these discussions are going on between sessions, between the players, that I'm not seeing, but the fact that they're happening tells me that my players are very invested in this game and what's going on, and that they care about these choices, and that they're excited about the possibilities that I'm throwing at them. And so that's kind of the mechanics of DMing, in my opinion. The understanding the fact that in the moment I realized that I didn't give them a choice, and then I made a choice up on the spot, I didn't have to flesh it out in detail, you know, it's just a favor. And, you know, they can kind of roam around with this favor until they feel that they are a little overwhelmed in a certain thing and go ask Lesage for help. And that'll be the favor. And it'll be interesting to see what they pick. I think I did a good job of making both things sounding enticing. And, you know, that's the thing. Don't just give your players 3 choices, but one of them is the really, really good choice and the other 2 are just kind of, you know, make all the choices good and just roll with it, whatever the players decide. And that kind of thing is gonna give them a little bit more freedom in allowing them to play the characters that they've created. If you kind of force their hand, you know, then their dreams for their characters could not be realized. And that's one of the major things that I'm trying to avoid at all costs. And again, you know, as I said before, sometimes you have to just squeeze their path and, you know, kind of let, you know, we've got like these 3 different things that you want to explore, but for the sake of introducing this new character, I made them explore one of those first. They still get to explore the other things, but I absolutely had to have them explore that one thing that day. And so hopefully this kind of gives you some insight into what's going on. And we can move on from here. The characters are now all traveling together in a pack now that they realize there are some serious dangers in the city that they didn't realize were there. You know, and they're heading towards the Temple of the Architect to recharge Ashley. Ashley was able to cast a couple of spells in the fight. I gave her a minimum damage magic missile, a single bolt, which dealt 2 damage. You know, the guy had 2 hit points, so that managed to drop him. And then one of the other players was down. They had a lot of players that were down, and she managed to heal for 1 hit point. It cost her... She has a 100% power. It costs her 20% of her power for each one of those things, which is, at this point, very expensive for Clara to recharge. But storyline wise, it was kind of important for that to happen. I'm basically trying to play the long game a little bit with trying to introduce how things work. And it's very interesting to see how all the players sat down at the table. They're expecting a certain thing, and then I'm kind of showing them that maybe their thoughts on the subject wasn't 100% accurate. But we'll see how it all plays out. I'm recording on Saturday, so we're playing again. We're playing in about 3 hours, and I've got a few things I've got to write, perhaps a voice or 2 to work on. And maybe I'll be creating another video on some of these voices, you know, kind of how I got started with even attempting to do voices. You know, I'm not a professional voice actor. I don't claim to be. I just think it adds a little bit to even try to do them. And some of the voices that I have are fairly recognizable to the players, and that to me is kind of what I'm after. A lot of my voices are kind of repeated for some of the more unnamed NPCs. And then sometimes I just kind of forget what voice I used, and I just create another one up for an NPC that I've already had. You know, there's a lot of NPCs. And not all of them are meant to be like these memorable characters. And so, but hope you guys are enjoying the campaign, or if you're not watching the campaign, you're just watching these videos. I hope you guys are enjoying these videos. Any sort of questions, just post in the comments below. I'll try to answer as fast as I can. And have a good day.